Hi, I'm Jeremy Tesh with EFI. I'm going to talk to you about the layout tools available in FireXF. FireXF has a comprehensive set of layout tools built in. Having layout tools built in means you don't have to step outside the Fiery workflow to prepare jobs for print, which can save valuable time. Preparing jobs within FireXF also brings consistency to job prep, where multiple applications might be involved in job creation. The layout functions that can be performed within FireXF range from basic scaling of jobs to advanced controls such as step and repeat tiling, and one of my favorite, nesting. And then we'll show you how all this integrates with cutting and barcode creation. So let's take a look at what this looks like in FireXF. The massive amount of space available in large format printing is what makes it such a flexible and useful print medium. That's why layout options are a core part of Fiery's feature set. So it gives you these built-in and position tools to do that layout right at your fingertips. Nesting is probably one of the most powerful and frequently used layout tool. And this is great for two reasons. One is it's a very fast way to assemble jobs and minimize media use because it brings them together sort of like a puzzle so that there's no wasted space surrounding jobs because they're filled with other adjacent jobs. The second use for this is just gathering jobs together in preparation for cutting. The great thing about this is that it's so fast and adaptable. Plus, each individual job in the nest can retain its own settings. So in that respect, you have a lot of flexibility for which jobs you bring together. The only thing they really need to share is the substrate or the media they're printed on. So let's grab this series of jobs and turn them into a nest. So the default mode here is to minimize media use. And what will happen is rotation and spatial placement will be optimized to minimize media consumption. Now, if you look here, you can see how this is working. Optimization is on media consumption, orientation is automatic. Now, once the jobs are joined into a nest, there's a lot of other things you can do. One is just copies within a nest. So that's sort of like combining step and repeat and nesting together. And to do that, all I need to do is select an item in here and then add to the number of copies. As soon as I do that, you can see they're stacked. At any time, I can right-click and just simply update the layout or just click apply and it will recalculate the nest. The other thing to remember is that once jobs are into a nest, the preview is essentially a page layout application where I can grab things, position them, I can even scale them on the fly or on the toolbar. Also can lock things in position. So if I need this graphic in the center, we can lock that and then recalculate the nest and everything will orientate around that. So as we work through these options, you can see there's a lot of flexibility and power here, but it's not very likely you're just going to create a nest, print it, and you're done. There's finishing involved at the end because you're eventually going to separate these pieces into individual jobs, either to different customers or just separate pieces. So let me show you how this can integrate with finishing. And first, let's just assume we're doing something simple like straight edge and razor blade. So we can turn on marks, standard crop marks. Now this is sort of a complex jigsaw puzzle. Let's go back to nest and we can tune this a little bit. Let's just set this to cut edges horizontally. So if I'm doing this by hand, arranging these into rows and columns would be much easier to separate these pieces. Now, if I'm in a situation where I'm producing a lot of this, especially with several printers, the hand finishing required I would become way overwhelmed. So let's go back to finishing and show you what that can look like. So instead of crop marks, let's do cut marks. And with our cut options within Fiery, we can integrate with cutting devices. So we can automate some of this and really speed things up. So for this example, let's turn on a cutter. As soon as I do that, you can see there are marks placed that are compatible with that cutting device. And now we can update that layout and we can see things are much more efficiently placed because we don't care about how difficult this is to cut. And just like any other layout option, the cut data for this exact layout, as I'm creating it on the fly, is then going to be sent to the cutting device. So that makes for a top to bottom, totally integrated system. And again, complete flexibility. So now that we have this set up with cut integration, you can imagine we could have many printers producing these. And for some cutting devices, we can turn on barcode functionality. With a barcode, we can make an alignment between what we're printing and the cut file. So if you can imagine 3 printers producing a pallet-sized stack of prints, that coordination becomes really important. So we can take that pallet, wheel it over to the cutting device. Sometimes this is several days later, we can zap the barcode and that alignment comes together. So speaking of the flexibility, we could also have an inventory challenge, a situation where we have that substrate, but not on the correct roll width that aligns with the way we set up our job. This is where integration and all this alignment is really important, because I can very quickly change the media boundaries, and then all of my layout and cutting can be adapted on the fly, right there at time of print. So you're not going to lose any time jumping out of your workflow, backtracking, try and fix this. So there's just one last category of nesting that can be super useful, especially in a proofing situation. So you can take any group of nests and apply uniform scaling, and this can give you a built-in scatterproof functionality. So if you take your images about to go into production, you can very easily make smaller samples of them and basically test run your color before you go into full production. So that covers the main categories of nesting. So far what you've seen is a very hands-on manual process of working with jobs, and that's a very common way of working with nesting. But the last thing I'm going to leave you with is the ability to set this up ahead of time. And this can put your nesting in full autopilot. So just like anything, nesting can be part of a workflow. And you can build an unlimited amount of workflows to do different types of nests and layout. Nesting is one of those things that looks a little bit different. So here, if you're preparing a workflow for nesting, everything down here is what you've seen before. But this top section is unique, and because you're not doing this manually on the fly with things you can see, you have to tell the nesting function what to do. So here is specifying a percentage or criteria that needs to be met before the job is considered complete, and then it starts processing. Most often this is associated with remote clients pushing jobs into the server and/or hot folders. So you can imagine jobs continually entering the server. You have to have some sort of cutoff point where, yes, we have enough jobs to fill this space. There's two ways to do that. One is percentage of sheet and one is percentage of line. Line is the simplest concept. It's basically the width across the printing area. Typically this is what you would select and is most commonly associated with a roll substrate. If you have a rigid sheet with a defined width and height, then you would want to use percent of sheet. That's a way of filling the entire board in 2 dimensions, typically used with rigid material. So that wraps up nesting and our last category of layout tools. To summarize, these are easy to use, built-in tools that really do bring consistency and efficiency to print rooms.